Hi everybody.
Hey folks.
Welcome back to Wandering into Wellness. I think you know me. I'm Lydia.
I thought you were about to say episode number there. I was like,
we
don't even know.
We don't know that anymore. It's terrifying.
50 something, 60
I feel like
something.
in the beginning we got really hung up on that. It was like, is this 9? Is this 8?
Yeah,
It's so exciting.
Like, I give up.
No, I have no idea.
It's fine.
Yeah. Anyway, today we are here with Aisling Jackson. And Aisling flew all the way from New Zealand just to be with us.
Just for this
Amazing.
podcast.
For Sarah. Pressure, Sarah. Jesus, no pressure.
Actually, kind of in a way. Me and Aisling met through the internet, in fact, because I did an Instagram takeover for one of my friends, Sophie Aisling's page, all on pregnancy and birth and that kind of stuff. And you reached out to me randomly.
Yeah, and watch your stories, yeah.
And said like, oh, we do the same kind of thing, but I'm in New Zealand and it'd be nice to hook up and chat about stuff. And then it turned out that you were actually coming to Ireland really soon.
Exactly, yeah.
And then suddenly a few weeks later I was teaching a yoga class in Lululemon, and there you were.
And it came along.
Amazing.
It was amazing. It was such a great class. I was just off the plane, so I got rid of all the jet lag, and it was wonderful. Yeah, it was that burning. It was really cool.
It was so nice.
Yeah.
It was I got to tell everyone as well. Then I was like, girl followed me from New Zealand. She came to my class.
I said Liga boost.
It was like a fangirl moment.
It was awesome. I love that. I love Instagram for those kind of things, for connections. And it is good.
Yeah, and it's really nice as well because I think that, especially in the world that we're in, which is kind of pregnancy, birth, and kind of women care though, isn't it? Really, it's it is a very tribal thing.
Definitely.
And it's kind of, even it's ironic to say it's a newly emerging thing because it's actually, it's ages and ages young, but we kind of just forgot about it for a while, and now it's a resurgence where people are kind of coming back to what they knew and really getting a chance to learn those old things that they'd kind of forgotten about. And it's so nice to meet other people, and especially when you've worked in different areas of the world, there's different cultural stuff that comes in, and how is it done, and birth systems are totally different in the hospitals and everything in every country, so it's really nice to connect with people and find out what those things are.
If you can't find them in person, find them online. Find that tribe online, or find the resources or the awareness or the education you're looking for. You can, there's ways to find it online too.
Yeah, because there are people that live in the middle of nowhere. And they can't get to a class, or there aren't anything happening near them. And like that now, people are doing classes online, and they are hosting webinars and all these kinds of things. So it's nice to think that those resources are out there. And I think social media has become kind of a bit of a dirty word recently, where people are all kind of like, oh god, it's so horrible. But actually there's a really good thing underneath it all. You just need to find the people who are the authentic voices and have a really good message to share.
The light side and the dark side, yeah.
So you teach pregnancy yoga and normal yoga?
And
Normal yoga.
I know.
And that's a strength, So I kind of focus on teenage yoga. That's one of my passions. And then I'm very passionate about pregnancy and pregnant women, supporting them holistically. So I bring in pregnancy yoga as well. But I do it in more of a circle format. So I do I call them sacred pregnancy circles. So it's like celebrating and honouring the journey of pregnancy and the journey of becoming a mother, or becoming a mother for second or third time.
And so did you have that passion, or was that innately in you from when you were much younger, or like when did this thing, was it only apropos your own birth that this began to emerge? Or when?
I always love like friendships and having women together and connecting. That's always kind of been something I'm really bringing women together. That's always an innate thing, I guess. And then once I became pregnant myself, I just became obsessed with birth. Read all the books. I had Ina May Gaskin. I had her photograph on my birth altar at home. I was,
I have a
really
picture of me and her together. And
No
I'm
way!
I'm like a creepy fan. I'm so red in the face. I'm like a 3-year-old beside her. I know.
Oh my goodness, I would have cried.
I know, it was the best moment.
I was channeling her. I was like, come on. She's
come
amazing.
through me.
So I guess it just stemmed from that. And then after, I guess, through my own birth experience, the things that I found really helped me holistically, I just felt like I wanted to share that with other women, and I felt like every woman should have the chance to experience pregnancy and birth in a beautiful way that's honoured, to honour the journey. Not just kind of like, what annoyed me when I was pregnant, when people, not annoyed me, but people would ask, so like, any food cravings, or what buggy have you got, what pram are you buying? They didn't really ask me like,
it's kind of so superficial.
I was like, well, how are you really feeling, like having a life growing inside? Something a bit deeper.
That's the stuff. That's
so I want to create a space for women to go deep and really explore.
What is this thing?
Journey,
growing another human and authoring that experience. Because
it's amazing. Isn't it? You're always like, hang on a second.
Even
there's
now,
a life inside me.
Like when I think back to it now, I really thought, I remember when I did my pregnancy training and all my birth training way before I had my son, and I kept I was so in awe of these pregnant women that I would see in my classes then, and they just look so amazing in the bellies, and they look so like full, like I felt poultry kind of at the top of the class. I was like, I just want to feel like that, and they must feel like they just have this knowing, like this special knowledge. And I was sure that after I'd had Reuben, I would have this feeling of like, I'm in that club. And it's weird. I look back now and I'm like, it's bizarre that I did that. It's like hard to even remember, not even to remember, but just to believe that actually I grew a human and it came out of me. It's a bizarre thing, because it's such a, I mean, I always think this, if we gave birth to babies that were in eggs and someone told you about some planet where they grew their babies inside their body, you'd be like, what? No. That is crazy.
And how they grow and how quick they grow really in those few months. It's just
and they come out in this whole fully formed, even what our pelvis has to do to separate, flip the tailbone back, allow them to get out. I mean, it sounds like sci-fi.
I know, it doesn't help. I know. And then breastfeeding, every stage of the journey, it's
amazing that we kind of just do it.
We're amazing. Women are.
Describe that little process though. Because you've said it to me a good few times before. I don't think we've ever talked about it. This is amazing. This is really.
The pelvis actually has to separate. So oftentimes you hear people in pregnancy classes, I'm sure, talking about SPD or symphysis pubis dysfunction, and that's because right between the bones of the pelvis at the very front, we have this kind of little area where it allows, normally that area is fused, but in pregnancy towards the end, around 36 weeks, all the relaxin hormone comes in and it softens that up because the pelvis has to literally separate in order to allow the baby's head to come through. And at the same time we have the coccyx and the tailbone that sits on the back. And one of the reasons that we try and say that it's not as easy for women to give birth lying on their back is because the tailbone is stuck there, it can't flip out of the way, but actually amazingly in labour it actually moves out of the way. Now it doesn't mean that you suddenly have a tail, it's not like this, but it just moves down and slightly out of the way. So that's often why women get that SI joint pain towards the end of pregnancy and also in labour, that they're feeling a lot of sensation there. That's because those joints are moving for the first time ever.
It's phenomenal that it does that and that it then recovers. And then maybe does that multiple times in a life, like maybe 9 or 10 times, depending on the family.
14, 15,
it's wild, isn't it? And to think that people actually still walk after that.
I know.
I mean, it feels like most of those changes, you make a change in the body, if you have like a significant accident where you break a leg or like break cartilage, or those things don't just like go back to normal. You're permanently, you are permanently changed, I guess that is the truth, but you don't usually have a functioning thing afterwards.
There's a dysfunction. And I think, and the truth of it is honestly that nowadays we are led to have an expectation that we just bounce back and everything is normal.
Bounce back. So there's no back.
There's no back.
You're moving on. You're a different woman there.
And there are. I mean, I still see clients who are maybe their oldest child's 10, and they're still dealing with pelvis stuff. 10 years later. So the reality is, it doesn't just bounce back. There are some hang-ups, and that's why we need to have care systems around us. We need
and it also
to
needs to be individualised, because this is the thing as well. Because like I know you like a hypertone situation. There are women who would be more closer to me where the tone doesn't come back naturally by itself, and you need to like treat those as totally different things, like different species essentially, right? But that rarely happens.
No, it doesn't. And I think what tends to happen in the current system, and I'm not sure if it's the same in New Zealand, is we get a lot of care when you're pregnant, and then you get care in birth, and then you give birth, and then it's just like, is your baby fat enough? That is basically it. Is your baby putting on weight? And then you're just ignored. If you've had stitches, then they're like, how are your stitches doing? But other than that, it's just like, go off.
There's no like rehabilitation program.
Go forth, suddenly imagine, just know how to be a mother. And yes, of course, people have done it for centuries, but back in the day, we were all living in much more tribal situations. We were with our sisters, with our mothers, with our grandmothers. We were watching them and knowing what to do. And we go back to our houses on our own.
It's more isolation.
It is.
And it's harder, mentally and emotionally as well.
I think it is because there's much more expectation as well to be performing to a certain standard. Like back in the day, it wasn't like cook all the organic meals, look great, make your child look great, do every single activity.
Make
to
your
that
visitors
standard.
tea. Do not make your visitors make you tea. You don't do those things in the first few weeks,
it's amazing.
Stay a short while and give them food.
That is it.
Like
turn up, clean their house,
give them a nice meal. And
the mums know that. I mean, I had a friend she's had 3 kids, and she was great. She would ring me and be like, I'm passing the supermarket. What do you need? And I felt comfortable to say to her, like, get me whatever, ready-made tortellini pasta that I can just chuck in a pan, great, anything. I didn't care about, was it organic or was it gluten-free anymore. It was just like, get the food that I can cook as quickly as possible. And she would do that, and she would drop it off, and she would say hi and give me a cuddle, and she would leave.
Magic.
And that's what you need.
That,
You remember them.
And you remember all those meals that were dropped off to you.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
They mean so much in those few weeks,
In terms of that kind of women's circle, kind of more tribal culture, and in New Zealand, where you have actually tribal culture kind of happening on a similar plane, like it hasn't been lost in such a way as it has here. Does that influence, like, is there more of an openness in general in society to the ideas of women's circles? Do you see that presence of
Perhaps
that?
I think, there is. Although the women I get, from different, I think it's also for women. I think it's a women's thing. They're remembering that this feels good to all come together. Vulnerability is a big thing, and like non-judgmental, that kind of space.
Yeah.
So I think women, every time I hold a circle at the end, someone will say like, "This is what I think we're craving this kind of coming back together and connecting on this deeper level." So I think it's and even I was at a circle last night in Dublin with a cacao ceremony, but that same kind of circle environment. And I think that's just what the world needs more of right now.
Yeah, because there's very little. I mean, when speaking of social media, there's very little opportunity to be vulnerable in that space.
Yeah.
Although you hear people talk it a lot. Often there's a real it was an incongruity like between what they're showing in a picture quite often and what they say underneath. Like nearly always this weird disparity where you have these like I don't mean ultra yogi like things like mad bendy scorpion poses, and then like I really broke down today, and you're like, well, it doesn't look like you broke down at all.
Looks like you're perfect.
Yeah, you're doing grand.
It's
you know,
easy
it's funny that
to have the words, but to have it in the picture.
And you really have to set up a space to do that.
I think being present in the moment with people face to face, like it's not recorded or put into, it's just like real life.
Yeah,
and then it's got
presence, but you're exactly.
It's let go, so there's not a feeling of you can't say this because it'll be forever noted in history in some kind of a way. I think that's the thing, and I think, I think coming back to a point that you were talking about, people were saying like, have you got the buggy? Have you got this? Da da da. It's like that, and then there's the other side of it where people are going, she's just pregnant, she's not sick, she can just carry on with her life. And there's like these two sides of it, and there's nothing in the middle where it's going like, this is a sacred journey. Yes, you aren't sick and you don't need to be treated like you're sick. You can still go and exercise and climb mountains and do all those things, but also around that there is an honouring that this is a time that is unlike any other time in your life, and you do need to take the time to honour that, because if you haven't thought about your own birth story, what's happened to you when you were born, you haven't talked to your mum about that, you haven't had a chance to process those things, when it comes to your birthing time, if you're holding on to those deep-rooted fears or traumas or stuff that you haven't processed, you're not going to be able to open and let go. And I think there hasn't been an honouring of that, or a space for one to honour that.
It's either chatting with friends, or it's a medical, talking about the birth or how many weeks you are, what size the baby. It's not like how you're feeling or how you're processing leading up to it. And like you said there, it's so fascinating that, like, especially for women, so say your egg was in your grandmother's womb.
That's amazing.
So that means think of ancestral, it's all carried down.
The lines are there. We were in their womb at that time, everything that they experienced in their life.
And maybe it goes back and back, it's just...
It's quite crazy.
And our grandmothers were in the war. I mean, that was wartime. So think about the trauma that they were experiencing.
And survival, living versus thriving, and how that affects,
scarcity and all of that kind of stuff. And I think, that's carrying down through us. And it's a different kind of a lineage. So, I think now there's this thing of... It's just, we just came to swing on this pendulum where it's either you're just...
Must provide all the excess because I had none of the stuff. Or vice versa, must have none of the stuff because you've had way too much excess. Do you like always you always notice in clothes fashion when it's a time of plenty, clothes fashions like ultra hip ones are like all the ripped jeans, all the torn, shitty, like broken stuff. And then when there's a time of like whatever, just not pussy or whatever, everything be really proper, really, really restrained, really tight lines, really kind of like, and it always looks really like, I'm dressing up, So it's like people always want to perceive it like in a time where there's loads of stuff around, they're like, no, it's cool, I don't need any stuff. When there's nothing around, like, oh no, I have all the stuff, I'll be okay. It's like that need to project that is really strange,
isn't it? And I think it's certainly the women that I come into contact with, they do one or the other. They either go into pregnancy and they're like doing all the things, really alternative, or they're just like, look, I'm just coming to class to get fit, which I'm told I go to, and then I'll leave before Shavasana and off I'm gone. And there's it's really hard to find that middle thing where you're like, it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're an airy fairy hippie person. if you also honor that journey and the emotions that are coming up. It doesn't have to be that. Like it might be that you're kind of like us and you're more on that side of the spectrum, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. It's just about understanding what are the hormones of birth, how are they going to affect you, how are they going to affect your birth journey, and then going, okay, I need to work with those. And the reality of that is, if I'm storing fears, if I have anticipation about things that are coming and I haven't acknowledged them to myself, there is going to be a sense of putting on the brakes. And and that's reality.
It's so weird that the medical model doesn't allow for the space for emotions, equals hormones to become literal in terms of their dealing with you. Isn't that it's insane. I mean, because ultimately they want you in and out, and if they want you in and out, they want you to have a super relaxed birth.
They want you to be able to relax. For some reason, they just like invert
that thing. Like it should be, everything should be like Palo Santo and friggin' like little touchy massages on the shoulders, and really, if they want to have the model to work the way they want, and instead they set up it's like this super rigid thing. Do you see that in New Zealand as well? Is it very different there?
It's different in New Zealand. I think I guess on that point maybe it'd be nice not to allow the system to dictate how you, just allow yourself to feel the spectrum, and not have to. That's only one part of it, the medical, going for that appointment or whatever. But in New Zealand it is very different. It is amazing. If I had another child, I would probably have the child in New Zealand again.
She said it here first.
I said if. I'm happy with my little boy right now. But
what's his name?
Oshin.
Nice,
But so in New Zealand, we had you choose your midwife, so you have a range of midwives to choose from in the town, and that midwife sees you all the way through your pregnancy, is there for you at your birth, and then sees you up to 6 to 8 weeks after birth. So to come visit you every day at the start, and then every few days, and every week. And I had I actually had an Irish midwife. And she was amazing.
And do you have the choice, home birth, birth centre, hospital?
Yeah, you can choose. So she was very home birthy, so I chose to go for home birth, but I might tell you later on, it didn't actually transpire. Well, it started off as a home birth,
right?
But it ended up in hospital.
Okay.
But you can choose, and there's no talk of money or how much it costs. You just choose where you want to go. There's no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I think what's the reality of here in Ireland is that we're missing the birth centres, and it's been a movement that's been the midwives have been trying to push for a really long time to try and get birth centres here. It makes so much sense because everyone knows our hospitals are massively overcrowded, and there's so many stories of women going in and they're literally just standing in a waiting room, walking up and down because there's no beds, and it doesn't make sense for anyone. I mean, the hospital staff are under massive pressure, and then they can't give the best model of care if they're under massive pressure to get people in and out to try and give them beds. I mean, you know that yourself. You couldn't possibly operate and be your best self within that model. But at the same time, women are having to choose between home birth and hospital. And like you, for me, home birth was the obvious choice. But for lots of people, it's a huge difference, especially on your first baby, to go home birth or hospital. And we hear so many stories, and there is so much fear that it feels like you're like, well, if I choose home birth and something goes wrong, everyone's going to say, well, it's your own fault because you chose home birth. Whereas if we had a birth centre, there would be that midway ground that people could have, and that is a bit more that way. There is like the candles and the birth pools and the soft padding, and it is a bit more like a home from home kind of environment. It's a different thing.
And so during your birth then, were you attending pregnancy women's circles as well at that stage?
So I was going to pregnancy yoga. I think I kind of created the circles because of what I was missing in my own pregnancy. I wanted to have more spaces to be heard and be seen and listen to other women and connect to women on a deeper level. So when I went to pregnancy yoga and read lots of books and got all excited about it, but I didn't have that circle.
And during yoga, did you begin to feel a little blip of that, like, oh, this is kind of the thing? Because it is kind of the thing, right? I mean, because there's usually you have an element of like fusion of energy in the room. You're moving together. You're kind of feeling the thing together. But it's still it was a bit more.
I guess when I was doing it, it was a bit more like yoga class, and then you go home. It wasn't like it wasn't really sharing and getting to talk.
That wasn't part of it.
Yeah, that wasn't part of the one I did.
Okay.
It depends as well, I think. On the studio, like in my classes, I always have the women sit in a circle. So you have that, which is nice, but it very much depends on the studio, what vibe comes out. Not even like at the beginning, everyone shares their name and how many weeks pregnant they are, and then we talk about a different topic each week. Could be, do you have a fear, or do you know what sex your baby is, or is there anything you're excited about, or just how are you feeling, whatever. And some weeks one person or two at the beginning share a lot, and then that leads everyone into sharing, and then it's a nice conversation.
Them to go first.
But then sometimes people are like,
it's great.
It's empowering as well.
And I think it's massive, even with just like, how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
If the first few people say, I've got no issues, I'm fine.
Yeah.
everyone
Nobody's
else
going to say
goes,
a damn
I've got
thing.
no issues. Because they don't want to be going, well, I've got my
Yeah.
boobs are really sore and my
Yeah.
back sore and my SPD and I'm not sleeping. Because we have this idea that then you're being a moan.
Yeah.
And we don't want to
Exactly.
be that. But it's not about that. It's about
No.
sharing, because other people might have experienced those things
Yeah.
yet. And
Yes.
then when they do and they've heard other people go through it, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
this
I'm
is
not
a
crazy.
normal
And
thing.
a pregnancy a circle with other women who are pregnant, it's a perfect place to allow yourself
Yeah.
to say those things. Like, yeah, I'm really grateful, but I've been getting sick every single day, and I just, like, just to allow yourself to.
And I think it's
be
hard.
real.
It'd be real because,
Yeah.
of course, it is this thing that you've looked forward to for so long. Sometimes you've been through IVF and all those things. There's this expectation from society that you cherish this and you just love it and you love pregnancy. And yes,
If society's not cherishing you back, sort of, in a way.
well, yeah, there's
So-
either this expectation of you just keep going,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
just, you just keep going, very little changes, and then you give birth and all of the rest of that. Or there's this thing of just like, you should be in bliss.
Yeah.
And if you're somewhere in, like, some women love pregnancy and
Yeah.
some women don't. And my first trimester was horrendous. I mean, I did not love it. I just didn't. And I felt really isolated in that, because I felt really like I couldn't, there were times I was just so nauseous and so faint. I was fainting every time I tried to sit up. I couldn't do my classes. I couldn't do anything. And I was really feeling resentful at that point. I was like, what is this?
Guilty
for
And then
feeling
guilty
resentful.
for feeling
Yeah.
resentful, and also not
Guilt
feeling
is
like
bad
I could
cycle.
even say to anyone
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, do I dare say it out loud that I feel this terrible,
And
terrible
then you're holding
feeling?
on to, and then when you hold on to emotions, they go into your body. You're holding on to that
Absolutely.
tension,
And you're bringing the tension. The tension's making it worse, and
And
the
the
whole
hormones,
thing.
you need to be as calm as possible in pregnancy,
Yeah.
avoiding stress, avoiding things that will cause you,
Yeah, and
as your
avoiding
cortisol to go up,
conflict.
just
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just need to stay in that place,
Happy
and
hormones.
for them, because it's their patternings growing inside you
Yeah,
as that's happening. They're
exactly.
experiencing everything that you're feeling,
Yeah.
so it makes a lot of sense for you to be
Yeah.
as calm and as happy as
There's a
possible.
beautiful book by I think it's Deepak Chopra. I can't remember the name. Do you
Yeah,
remember the name?
Enchanted
Yeah,
Pregnant-
that's the first
Enchanted
book I
Beginners.
read. And it's beautiful. It's all about like just everything you're experiencing the baby is on some level.
Yeah.
But instead of feeling guilty about that, 'cause that's where you go first.
Yeah.
Just actually spend time every day just connecting and sending good energy from your heart to the baby's heart, and just having that good
Yeah.
vibrations all
I think
around.
it's also the thing that, like, self-love, which is a very hippie term, but that idea we really haven't allowed ourselves, even for the fact that I'm pejoratively calling it a very hippie term, like we don't allow ourselves to do it while we're not pregnant.
Yeah.
And so how is it going to suddenly magically switch on when we are? Because essentially it is yourself initially
I
as
think
well,
it
right?
almost makes you look at it like, I think pregnancy is a huge transformational journey. So
Yeah.
not just a physical, but the mental, emotional, it's a spiritual journey, isn't it? I feel like that. So it makes you face those things. It makes you face your fears, face your old traumas, face your how much you love yourself and how much you're going to give love to yourself to then give to your baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it brings
To
it
be
all up.
really permissive with it.
Brings
Yeah.
it all up right here.
Yeah.
Face it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can avoid it.
Yeah, you
and I
can.
think, and also I think something that people don't talk about enough. They do talk about it, but it's never talked about, I think, fully in depth, is the fact that we live in this society where, as a woman, gaining weight is just wholly negative. And then suddenly, and you've gone through your whole life having this understanding that being thinner is just basically better. And it's getting in there in a million different ways all the time. Even if you think you're fairly comfortable and you're kind of like, feel good, you get pregnant and suddenly you start gaining weight. And you know you're meant to, and you also know it's good for you. But it also doesn't stop you feeling like, how do I feel about this? Like, you can also know it's fine and be comfortable with it, and at the same time still have all those same uncomfortable feelings that you would have if you were gaining weight normally. And there's no forum to talk about it, because people are like, well, you're just pregnant, of course you're gaining weight. And you're like, yeah, but still, like, it's tough to not be able to fit
It's this
into all your old
paradox of
clothes.
humanity that we're not allowed to have two feelings at once. Like, if you say, I'm
Yes.
feeling that means about everything in your life you're feeling that one thing, as opposed to like, well, I feel good about this, grand about this, 2 out of 10 on that one. There's very little allowance for that, and it's really
You
that
can
kind of
have
forgiveness of yourself that needs to come from outside in as well as inside out, doesn't
Exactly.
it?
And
The
it's
duality exists. I think another thing as well
Yeah.
that comes up as well, like after the baby's born, the mother's also born, so you're a new mom, so your whole you're a mother now for the first time, so your identity changed. And I feel like lots of what we discuss in the mom and baby circles, we have so the graduates of the pregnancy circle move into the mom and baby
Cool.
circles. But often we talk about identity. So like, I'm so grateful I have this beautiful baby and I'm a mom, but I miss my old ways, or I miss my career. Exactly. But that's okay. You can have both. Like you said.
You're allowed to feel that, like, want for independence as well, as much as your baby's feeling want for independence as well from you. Yeah.
And even just voicing it makes it better. Yeah. Just being allowed to speak that outside, because otherwise you're burying it in there and it's festering and getting all horrible. But being able to say those things out loud is really, it's so cathartic. And women's circles and those kinds of circles, it's very much, as the leader of them, it's very much about creating and holding space. And it feels like such an intangible thing to even be able to explain what that is. But you know it. When you walk into a circle where the person leading it is holding the space really well, you feel comfortable to be completely relaxed and vulnerable. And if it isn't that case, people climb off. And I know that. I know that in myself. If I'm late for class and I'm running in and there's other stuff in my life and I'm not really present and I haven't had time to centre myself, I'm sure those are the days where everyone's just like, I'm grand.
Exactly. You know? And Steve, I even think I use the word like facilitator, like not even just facilitating. Like often I don't really talk that much. They'll talk more. So, just having this, as you said, holding the space. Energetically as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And do you come into the room a long time beforehand? What do you do to set things up?
I usually will come in. Most of the time I do. So often, actually, in the summertime in New Zealand, because it's beautiful weather, we did our circles outside in nature. So it was amazing, under the trees and the Shavasana in the trees, on the beach. It's
pretty special.
Yeah, so it was nice. So I'd come along with my cushions and rugs from the car. Right. But in the studio, I'd come a bit earlier and set this, sage and all that, and
nice smells and nice feelings, but it is about nurturing. I mean, when you think about the end of it, like learning to nurture yourself and look after yourself gives you the tools to learn to look after somebody else, and that is the job transition that's happening right then. So the more you can do that in pregnancy, the easier that transition can be, and the more you're allowed to do that, because I'm always talking to women at the end, that kind of 37 weeks onwards, that their job is to build as much oxytocin in their body as possible. So their job is to literally go, what are the things that make me happy? And how can I fill my days with those? And it's not like...
Give me all the romantic hobbies, all the nice teas,
all the chocolate.
All the chocolate,
but it's not about self-indulgence, because I think people instantly are like, I'll get a massage. It's like, no. This is actually your job. Because your birth is going to be so much smoother for you and your baby and your partner and your care provider if you go into it with a massive amount of oxytocin.
And it's the same in so many aspects of life as well. If we take our job as being joy, like our actual job for ourselves being joy, then the only way that will go is better for everybody else outside ourselves as well. I mean, I say this as a full hypocrite because it's something I'm really trying to do and really don't embody as much as I'd like to. But
it's a practice, isn't it?
It's a major practice, and it's like the sense around indulgence in it is so unhelpful.
So strong as well, though, isn't it?
It's a bummer because it's internal as well. I mean, that patterning is, unfortunately, I think that's really a human thing. It's not just a case that our parents have taught us that way. It's really a part of the human condition to kind of to feel bad for having too much of whatever, TV or lemonade or whatever it is.
Or even just like energy.
Or energy,
you see like my son is like a massive energy kid, and like that is a source of massive criticism from everyone, and also from me at times. Where you're just like, he's just too much. Like there's just too much going on, and we're so quick to jump to that too much thing in everything in our lives, whatever it is. As soon as we have that instinct to kind of self-flagellate, where we're like, no, beat yourself over the back with a stick, you must feel bad about that thing again. I think it's a very hard thing, and like to your point, to come from this mentality when you aren't pregnant and suddenly to jump in and embody the earth mama, all connected, all nurturing, all loving creation, it's a huge jump, because it's not that most people get to give up their jobs and float around in loose dresses and barefoot and connect to the earth. It's like you're going from possibly a corporate environment where you're sitting at a desk making decisions in a very masculine environment, and then you jump to your yoga class or your circle and suddenly you're like,
what is this? What am I feeling?
And I think for me, one of the things we wanted to talk about today was that the idea of that holistic journey. So for women that maybe hadn't come into contact with those ideas, maybe they've heard of pregnancy yoga, now, and they might have heard of active birthing, but the idea that there's more to it than that, it can be a really scary and kind of daunting concept. And for me, there's like a lot of ways you can do that don't have to be endpoint oriented. They can be just like, get some really good books. I had a really nice journal called the Sacred Pregnancy Journal. And it wasn't kind of like massively hippie or anything like that, but it was just like each month it would have a different pointer of that you might look at in your life to deal with. So it might be like, talk to your mom about how your birth was and over a cup of tea. And then you might go and do that, and then you would journal about it, and then it would give you facts about where you were in your pregnancy and interesting things, or what might be good supplements to take at that time, or what might be good nutritionally or whatever. And then the next month it would have a different focus, like have you looked at how your relationship's going to change afterwards? Sit down with your partner, and it would have a little meditation.
That's a great topic to discuss. It's
a huge thing, and we forget about it massively. We just think about like, there will be a baby. Okay, so we know that's going to be different, and we think about we're probably not going to get much sleep. And our body's going to be different. And we know that.
Spare room, another room, more storage.
More stuff, all of that kind of thing. The practical things, but that tangible thing about like, how are our roles going to be? Are we going to take traditional masculine and feminine roles? Like, how are we going to relate to each other? How are we going to make time for sex? How are we going to make time for romance? Like, what is that going to feel like? How are we going to nurture each other? All those things. I feel like everyone should go through like couples counselling in pregnancy to like prepare them for that thing afterwards, because it's a phenomenal change. I mean, it is, and it's so sudden.
Exactly.
You don't know when it's coming. Like, whenever in your life is there something which is going to change your life forever, and you're just waiting. You're
definitely
like,
learning.
is it today?
It's a learning on the job thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
totally
practical.
And some people are better than others. That's the thing. And I think what the key point for me that seems to come up again and again is we've lost our elders. Back in the day, we would have had elders who would have been teaching us, who we would have gone to, who would have been present, who would have been showing us where we were going wrong, or anticipating that, or showing us by modelling. And now we're not party to that. You know, birth isn't happening in the home, so we're not witnessing births all the time, so we don't know what that looks like. And so it's this scary thing that happens somewhere behind closed doors, and then we hear the terrible stories, and that's it, and that's our concept of it.
It's hard to hear the good story. You know, go seek out the good stories.
It's really hard to seek
them out. But they are out there.
They're there. There are so many of them, but everyone says that. People are really quick to tell the trauma stories, and it's not from a bad place. It's from a need for catharsis. Those people are like, I have to get this out. Like, I have to be heard.
Well, I think a woman sharing her story is that's a sacred thing in itself. That's a practice. That's a ceremony. It's a ritual, you know, and holding space for women to do that. And then, I don't know, I just love hearing any birth story. I'm just like, tell me everything.
I know.
And but I think it's important to, if you are pregnant, if you don't want to hear the bad stories, then, you know, that's okay. You don't have to. And like you said, like, it's individual. So just do what feels good for you. Like, don't feel like you have to go to all these pregnancy yoga classes if it doesn't feel like, you know, maybe just like sample one that you kind of, you know, like find your balance.
And it's trying it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the other thing.
Being
is
open.
That I know that my pregnancy classes are very different from some other people's, and so you kind of, it's not that you go to one and you go, no, I don't like pregnancy yoga.
Exactly.
You have to try it out, like with anything. And it might be that you go to pregnancy Pilates, or you might just go to an active birth workshop, or you might just like get videos at home,
you
or
might
get
find a great meditation,
or whatever those things
something you need at night time to listen to. Just some little ritual you can bring into your day. It doesn't have to be a class. It can always be something at home as well.
Just to acknowledge that this time is different, and to be present, because I think you never know what's going to happen afterwards. Like, certainly I felt like I thought I would have a big family, and that doesn't look like that's the way that's panning out. So I feel like if I had known that was going to be my only pregnancy, I would have had a very different spin on it. Like, I would have been much more honouring of like, this is the only time I'm going to have this day in this pregnancy ever. And then it would have made that whole thing, all the tough stuff would have been much easier, because it would have been like, well, this is only happening once.
I know.
And this is, but when we're always in the future, we're like trying to race through the thing to get to the good thing at the end, thinking, well, I'll have time to do this again. I'll do it again another time. You know, even kicks, like my little guy was such a kicker, he was kicking me all the time. It was really sore, you know, and I wasn't able to like sit in that like, oh, isn't this lovely? It was more like, I can't wait for this to stop. And
but that's the thing, not everyone loves pregnancy. You know, everyone's different. So just be where you're at.
Did you love it?
I loved being pregnant.
Okay.
I actually stayed pregnant for another year or two.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it. People were like, "What is she like?" And I had a very beautiful pregnancy, and I was the flowy dress, flower crown, bare feet, and I was kind of I really relished it. I went on early maternity leave and had more days just to have all those. Yeah. But then I was kind of, I guess, naive at the time, thinking if I read all the books and journal all the affirmations and listen to hypnobirthing every night, I'm going to have the most amazing home birth in the water. And then I learned a beautiful lesson in the first number 101 of motherhood, which is surrender. So just surrendering. We can't control things like children, births, anything. So just so that's always a lesson. It's a practice. But so I started off. Will we go into the birth story now? We're going there.
I'll segue. Yes.
Okay, look, you love them too.
I'm into
Get
it.
into it. So I started off at home in the had a birthing tub in the.
How many weeks were you when you?
I was 3 days overdue.
And in New Zealand, what is it? Do they have a birth date, or is it a birth month, or is it a birth week?
They give you a due date. Okay. But I think estimate date. You have it in your head as an estimate, yeah.
And how long do they let you? Do they let you go over? Like, how is that?
Just let you go. It's very I always felt like it was my decision. Like it should always be the woman's decision. It's your body, so they can guide you. Obviously, the doctors have expert. They are doctors who, but it's your decision. They can't tell you to.
Here they can though.
Yeah.
Very much. Oh yeah. Wow. You get a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
To go 10 days over. Or less, isn't it? Or 4 days or something.
Yeah, it depends whether you're going home. Like home birth, you're going to have longer.
Yeah.
But hospital birth, it depends on the hospital. Each one has a different policy. Yeah. And then it's going to depend on how's your baby growing.
Yeah. Of course,
and they're all going to have different.
I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was 41. Well, yeah, my midwife was like, let's not worry about that. Let's just, she was very kind of keep me present. So 3 days after, I just started getting I had Braxton Hicks the whole way in the end, so I didn't know what was early labour, what wasn't.
Explain that.
Braxton Hicks is that kind of contraction without it's not real labour, but it's preparing your uterus and getting ready, so you feel it tightening. And then so you kind of just stop and almost like a cramp, but not very comfortable.
It's different
it's
when you
weird.
get it.
It's kind of a bit like if you've eaten like so much too much food, and your belly just like rock hard. Like that all of a sudden you're like. And you can't really breathe, like you can't expand into the thing as well, and then it's gone. You're like, oh, thank God.
Wait, so your diaphragm's sitting right above the womb thing, right? That's insane.
Yeah, and everything, all the organs,
the entire time. Everything is. It's
gets squished up. It's amazing.
And your diaphragm, your pelvic floor, like almost working in unison together. Active, passive. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was having mild contractions and or rushes, as I call them. I wasn't calling them painful, So in the evening time. Also, I think when you go into labour, like the time of day or night has an effect. If you go into labour in the evening time, you have no sleep all night, and then all next day, you're going to be more tired.
Yes.
But if you have a full night of sleep and then go into labour in the morning, you're already ahead of yourself. So I went to labour in the evening. So all through the night I laboured, and then my midwife came over around 6 a.m, and then we laboured all morning, and then it was all going really well, and I went through the phase where I felt like I can't do this anymore, but I don't want to say it out loud, but it's actually getting really hard. But then I remembered that's transition.
I know, and then it's so good. You're like,
I want to vomit. I feel really sick. I'm going to throw up, and then I vomited. Oh, hang on, that's transition. I read about this. Yes, we're getting closer. So I think all the reading there was helping me. And then I got to the pushing stage, and he was in a good position. I fully dilated, but then something happened where he must have turned his head, or who knows.
Just before you go into that, just for one second, what's the transition phase actually? What's happening with the transition phase?
So, in your contractions, just to use the technical terms, the cervix is say like this. It's pulling, the contractions are pulling the cervix up and out like this, so that the cervix opens. And then when transitions come, it's so confusing because you've just got used to the sensation of the contraction. You might not be loving them, but you know what's happening, you know what to expect. And then suddenly what happens is the top of the uterus pushes down as an ejection reflex. So it goes from this to this, and it's a completely different feeling in your body. And the transition between those two things, the transition between that to that is transition. And at that stage, because it's so different.
Just like a really acute moment.
Oftentimes you can be sick, or you can have diarrhea, because obviously you're trying to clear out all the passages so there's as much room as possible for the baby to come down.
It doesn't energy.
It doesn't happen always. Like it didn't happen for me, the being sick thing, but it does. It's really common for women to say, I actually can't do this anymore. I think I'm dying. I'm done.
I'm done.
I can't do it now.
Wow.
And,
so sorry.
And that's really common. And I think, like you said, for me, exactly that. Having read all the birth stories before, when it got to that point that I said that, I was suddenly like, it's transition.
Yes, exactly.
And then you're like, yes, because you know that then you're moving towards the pushing stage and you're nearly at the end.
Yes.
So in your head, mentally, it's a totally different thing. So I think in that situation, information is so powerful. It is important. I mean, it really is.
But then it does get to a point where it's almost like, okay, so what's happening next?
Totally.
You have to not be too much in your head. You have to be in your body and be that kind of primal, have that primal energy. So anyway, so in the house, in and out of the water, in the pool, on the bed. So my mortar's broken in the toilet. And then pushing. And then something happened. He was, all of a sudden, he wasn't in the right position. He was stuck. His head was a different way. So instead of like here, it was kind of the forehead part. And my lovely midwife was very, giving me some tips and trying again. And she said, we could wait maybe half an hour, but maybe we should think about hospital. I was like, no hospital. I haven't even packed a bag. I'm not going. I was a bit stubborn. Yes. I'm like, hang on. I remember reading this pelvic something. It was called like. Pelvic squeeze. I read in the anime book. So I was like coaching like my partner and my midwife, push my hips together in the next contraction. So I tried lots of different things for a couple of hours.
Right,
I was being very persistent then.
Okay.
Hadn't learned to surrender just yet. Anyway, eventually I did surrender, and we went into hospital, but it wasn't your normal, like, it was me walking in with a towel to my leg saying, I don't want to be here. I was not gracious. And but they were all lovely, and they were so nice in the hospital, amazing. And anyway, I won't go, a few more hours of trying all different things, and all the things I didn't want to have. I didn't want any medical intervention, but I had, in the end, I opted for an epidural, and that was actually very relieving. I'm no longer against when they're needed. So. And then in the end, the one thing I didn't want to have a C-section or cesarean birth. I had a cesarean. But I like, actually, a yoga teacher told me once, it's not like, a vaginal birth or cesarean. It's actually a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth. You still gave birth. Yeah. That's a really important thing, I think, just to emphasize. But so I gave birth then. And it was, since he was born, I think that was worth every second. It was worth it. But after that happened then, so I was, it was all fine. Obviously, you're on happy hormones, you're accepting what happened. But then afterwards, a few hours after that, we got back into the room, and it was breastfeeding, it was lovely. And then he got checked over, and they actually thought he had a tumor, was mentioned, and they wanted to fly him for surgery, emergency surgery. So the very next morning, he was born in the evening time. The next morning, they came in and told me he's got to go to hospital, and you can't go because you just had a cesarean section. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they flew my husband and him up in an ambulance and airplane to Auckland, and I was left in Gizzy on my own.
Terrifying. That's the toughest thing.
That's not quite what I had manifested,
No, at all.
So then I had to have a day and about 33 hours where I was separated from him before I got to fly up there. Amazing hospital midwives. They're actually letting me express into a syringe colostrum. Really? And if I couldn't have gone up there, they were going to fly my milk all the way up there.
Really? That's amazing.
That's how amazing New Zealand. Yeah, isn't that amazing? But anyway, eventually then I was flown up a day and a half later and got to bond with him, and he had surgery and he was fine. It was no problem.
Phew. What was it though? It
was just he had something,
a growth of some sort.
They were worried about it, But it was all good.
Jeez, wow.
But it was just one of the, but I think I was so in shock of just kind of overcoming the birth and, healing and pain. So I wasn't really processing it, but my poor husband was already thinking all the worst case scenarios.
Of course.
And having to leave you must have been really traumatic. Yeah. Because it's such an instant thing of suddenly, it's always been you two looking after each other. And suddenly it's and now you're parents.
And you're a family, but now you're separate. Yeah. So it was all... It was full, but I think maybe that's that kind of that big event that happened to me, and all the support I got so much. My Irish midwife came into hospital the next day with she'd made Irish soda bread for me.
Oh, great, that's cool.
Nice. With Irish butter she found somewhere.
Talk about nurturing.
Exactly. So it all ended well, but it just gave me a huge lesson in you can't just make things happen the way you want. You have to totally surrender, and also. The way it'll happen, maybe he was meant to be in hospital, so they would spot that and give him the rights, so everything happens for a reason, as cliche as that sounds, but I think
there's no point in thinking any other way around it.
Exactly,
even if it didn't,
But I did have to process the disappointment, and people say, but the baby's healthy, but actually, if a mom does go through a traumatic birth and they need time and they deserve time to process that.
It's a confusing set of emotions.
And to feel both sides. To feel grateful, but to feel disappointed.
And I think that the disappointment thing's real. I mean, people always say that. They always come back to, but you and your baby are healthy and you survived. But that is not the most important thing in life. Actually, your experience of the thing is what carries through. How you feel about it. Thanks. How you feel about it is a massive, massive thing, and it's not to be taken lightly. I mean, you still my birth story was similar in a way to yours. Actually, really similar in that I had planned a home birth, had the same midwife the whole way through my pregnancy. She was amazing, and she was really funny as well. And you love your home birth. I mean, you just love your midwife. We still chat on text each other all the time, and I love her so much.
It sounds like the most vocational job in the world.
I think it's the most important job in the world.
Possibly, That's right up there.
I mean, you're so vulnerable at that time, and you're so putting all your trust into them that bond that you're having, because in labour you're looking to them to go, is this okay? And you are literally giving your life and your baby's life over to their hands. So you really need to have that deep trust.
And they're seeing every side of you.
Every side of you, when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're scared, all of those moments they're seeing, and they're seeing the intimacy between you and your partner as well, and knowing when to step out of the way and knowing to stand in, and it's just such a
pretty nuanced well.
They're amazing.
Totally.
Midwives are, they're amazing.
They're totally amazing.
They
and
should be paid a lot more.
Shouldn't they though?
Yeah.
And afterwards, because of that home birth thing as well, she came to my house every day for 2 weeks afterwards.
Oh, wonderful.
And I couldn't have done it without it. The day that she left, I cried so much.
Same, I cried.
I can't believe I'm not going to see you like my best friend.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe I'm not going to see you anymore. It was like, it felt so, it suddenly became transactional because it was like, well, this is over now. And the payment is finished and the thing. And you're like,
client. Yeah, what?
No,
I'm not a client.
But I was the most special one, obviously. you felt a different bond with me though, right?
You know?
That kind of thing is so...
It must be hard for them. They're amazing, you know? Because they must get emotionally involved.
Absolutely. To do that, like it's like you hear about teachers moving on in the year. They're moving on every few months.
I know.
And much more of a strongly attached, because they have to be attached or else they won't do their job, right?
No, right.
There has to be a big emotional part.
And they have to know you as well. They have to know that in those moments how you're going to behave. Like they can go, one mum, there might be a situation and they might go, I think she's going to handle this okay. We can probably be fine. And another mum, you'd be like, no, this just isn't for her. We need to move to this. You know, so they have to be able to make those judgments.
And know your own intentions and your own, Well, I think there's a point you mentioned there about how you want to feel. I think like what I say a lot to the women, you know, when you're making a birth plan or thinking about, instead of thinking about how you want it to happen, because we can't control that, but just to reflect upon maybe a few words or core desired feelings of how you want to feel in your birth experience. So you want to feel empowered, you want to feel supported, you want to feel loved, you want to feel, you know, those kind of words. Like if you focus on those, no matter what happens, if it's a emergency cesarean section or a half an hour home, you know, whatever happens, if you just felt empowered in the process. That's the most, I think that's really key.
And I think it's very hard for us to not, you know, and that feeling thing changes it massively, doesn't it? Because for me, like, I had to transfer at the end when his head was crowning already. I had to transfer to hospital. So I gave birth to him like in the hospital as well. Right. And for me, there was definitely regret afterwards of like, because it turned out that we probably didn't need to transfer in the end as it was. And, you know, at the time I was totally fine with it. Like, when they told me I'm going to transfer, I was just like, oh, whatever. I mean, sure, his head was half out. I was like, I don't care, whatever it happens. But afterwards, the fact that I wasn't in my home was a massive thing for me, because I felt really uncomfortable in the hospital, and we'd left our dog at home. It was completely unplanned. We hadn't bought any clothes for me, any clothes for the baby, any nappy, nothing. So, like, everyone was naked.
My pool was still in the living room.
Totally.
I have some amazing friends who went back and just sorted that out.
I know, but you know, when you're feeling stressed and you don't have a phone charger, you don't have it, and you're suddenly like, I'm just in this hospital. I was totally unprepared for this. And you feel really like, you've been robbed of that thing that you were expecting. Like, had I been at home, it would have been like, and now we go get cozy in my bed and we'll snuggle up and we go to sleep. And that was really the imagining that I had in my head. And it wasn't so much about the birth process itself, but it was like the bit afterwards, the feeling of being comforted and being nurtured. And I didn't feel that afterwards. I felt really scared and I felt really left alone. Like, I didn't have those people around me telling me what to do or looking after me. It was just, you know, it was obviously business as usual, get on to the next person. Like, they weren't like having an absence of care, but there was no like nurturing thing going on. And that's the moment when you're most vulnerable. You're really weak and
those
you're really
first
tired.
few days, and then your hormones are shifting, the breastfeeding starting, the milk's coming in, and those are and
you're just like
so vulnerable.
You're in shock. I mean, you're just in this like, what just happened?
You had this big huge event in your body and your life, and Benet, you've got this, you know, he's here or she's here, he's finally here, and then you've got to okay, now what?
And now
change your nappy, how to breastfeed,
and it's also they're like this stranger as well. You're like, you're now in my life. I mean, you're going to change my life forever. But ultimately, you're like, who is this person?
And they're staring back at you doing the same thing.
Totally.
How are you?
And Ruben didn't look at all like how I was expecting him to look. Like, he was very different looking than I had in my head. I don't know. I hadn't consciously had a thing in my head. But when I was looking at him, I was like, this isn't. I mean, this is. Are you my baby? This is bizarre. Like, I just thought my baby was going to be a different baby than this baby. So then you're like, okay, so this is us now, and you're kind of getting to know each other then. And it took a while. Like, it definitely took like the best part of 2 weeks for me to finally go, oh, okay, I know you. Like,
and that's common.
It's really common.
I'll give it instant, connection.
No, and people talk about this, like you said, like afterwards you're on that happy hormones. Like, I didn't have that. I didn't have that big high of happy hormones, and I'd had what I felt like was pretty textbook birth. Like, everything went great, but I didn't have what I was expecting to have. And obviously, in retrospect, the shock of the transfer to hospital, even though it didn't feel to me in that moment that it was shocking for me, must have inhibited that massive oxytocin release at the end that people do get for me. you know, and in your case, it was still a shock, but it didn't happen for you. But all you ever get told is like, once your baby's born, you're going to forget everything and it's going to be so good. And it isn't always that way. Like you can be left in this weird thing where you're like, oh, obviously I loved him. Obviously I was going to look after him. And like he was mine, but I didn't feel like, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me in my life, and I'm just so happy and I'm blissed out. And I've seen so many mums in that state. I know what that is. I definitely didn't have that. And I was so glad to have my midwife when I got home, because she was like, listen, this is how it was for me as well. Like I didn't get that grows. And just like when you meet people, some people are instant connectors with people and some people take a little bit of time to warm up to them. And that's what happens with your baby. And I thought, like, more people need to know that, because for me it was terrifying. It was like, oh my god, is there something wrong with me? Like, do I not have enough love
and that's why you need that, you know, the wise women. So you know the 5 pillars of postpartum wellness. There's 5. So one of them is having a council of wise women. So having wise women around. This is for afterbirth.
I was going to ask, did your mum travel across? But anyway, go on. Sorry.
She did later, a few weeks afterwards. And I had lots of close, and I had friends who have been there before. You always know the ones who come in and they party your house and give you food. They know what it's like, you know, the mums. So a council of wise women around you. Proper nutrition is so important. You need to eat like extra meals, especially if you're breastfeeding, extra meals, or even not if you're just healing from birth. Rest. I love how it says rest, not sleep, because let's be realistic. It's like just some downtime.
Just being still.
Just choosing to you know you can do some breathing or some that kind of thing. Bring that in. Connection to nature is a really important one as well for well-being. So even just getting outside and fresh air. I know it's Ireland, but fresh air. And then the last one is touch.
Okay.
Touch. So not even like even your partner giving you a hug or anyone giving you a hug or just touching your baby, skin to skin. Just that touch is really important for new moms.
I think that's, you know, it's so key, isn't it? And I think nutrition is a big one, isn't it?
Yes.
Though? And I mean, you must see that a lot in the shop.
All the time.
Do you get women coming in, like, partners coming in and saying,
what
do I do? What do I do?
Well, yeah, obviously, I mean, like, the thing is that for most people, unfortunately, that, like, nutrition within pregnancy and postpartum is kind of like, it's become, like, reductive to the point of, like, I need DHA and I need folic acid, and you're like, God almighty, I mean, like, you're not going to live on DHA and folic acid. So I don't know, there's a really narrow perception of the requirements, in the same way as like when you get women with anemia that they're like, my doctor has prescribed iron. You're like, okay, cool, but you know what else it takes to build blood cells? Loads of stuff, like loads of like B12, zinc, B6, everything else, you know. And so I think when it comes to like, it's the spectrum and the smorgasbord and the diversity that we need in life and everything that like definitely applies during pregnancy. And I think the big thing, what I've heard David Wolfe say around pregnancy, around conception actually, was that there have been some studies on where they've shown that women who are like replete with fats, just from every source, like oily fish, avocados, walnuts, whatever supplements, that there's a sudden trigger in the body. Body's like, oh, this is cool. This is like a safe place where there's loads and loads of good stuff coming in. I can make loads of hormones. I'm going to make a baby now. And so I think anything that we can do to kind of like replete the body with all the nutrients, like all the nutrient stores, all the cacao, all the turmeric, all the fun stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, big time, man. I think that's really the way to kind of augur it. And it's unfortunate that like most pregnancy supplements, bar a tiny spectrum of them, are really narrow and really myopic, and the people coming in looking for them are just looking for essentially folate and DHA.
And also, you want to put natural things into your body.
Absolutely.
So you don't want the synthetic ones that are in our
big time. You know? Absolutely,
so getting really good quality one is important.
But I think it's all. But it comes back to that same thing, doesn't it? It's just fear based. It's like the studies haven't been done on the pregnant women. So don't eat the cheese and don't eat the fish and only eat this thing and don't eat this thing.
And you're like conflicting advice.
But I can eat all the like the burgers that came from the things with the pesticides and blah blah blah. And that'll be fine. Okay.
All the ice cream.
Do you know for sure? No, you don't. Okay, grand.
Like, did you study the pregnant woman who ate all the donuts and the ice cream and that worked better?
That went fine.
You're like, it's so weird. You're in this time of plenty, you know, and of massive growth and of abundance. And you're being told all this stuff about denial. It's just like, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that, and that's rubbish. And you're like, what? And you're also then being told, don't eat too much because you'll put on too much weight and you only need a tiny bit more. But everyone's body is different and you're starving and you get in this, you're like, I'm starving, but I probably shouldn't eat that because I'm only meant to eat the amount of a Mars bar a day extra. Otherwise I'll put on too much. And you're like, but sometimes the baby's growing massively and then sometimes it's not. It's
exactly.
You have to be able to fluctuate with those things.
And also I think when you're pregnant, you're just so much more in tune with your body. So if you just quieten out all that noise and just tune into yourself. You know, intuitive eating, just like, what does my body actually really need today?
Yeah.
And maybe it does need more carbs and more fats and more, you know, or maybe some sugar because, you know, milk's sweet. But, you know, in moderation. It's all just tuning into what you need individually.
And have you always been good at that with yourself? Is that something you really? Because you seem like you might be quite cerebral. Am I wrong?
What does that mean? Who? Like,
I don't know, somebody who's like quite like bookish a little bit, like in terms of like I read, like when you're saying you read all the books to know what would happen.
Is that the
only thing you've applied that in that principle?
I kind of go through phases. I used to be very kind of strictly vegan or strictly something, but now I'm more intuitive. Like I eat, I don't eat dairy because it doesn't really grip me, but I eat eggs. And, But I did think I'd be very, 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 very healthy in pregnancy, but I did, you know, want chocolate and want, you know, so I think it's all this balance. Yeah. But I really am interested in like nutrition, and especially I breastfed for over 2.5 years. I felt really depleted after that, so I've been.
Jeez, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so and he's like a big boy, you know. So I really am into this replenishing myself with good nutrients and flooding my body with all the good things now. Yeah.
And what's he like as an eater?
He's good now. Yeah, he's good. He's staying here with his nana and granddad who were sneaking him biscuits when I watch him. So I'm trying to be a bit more a little bit okay. Yeah, okay. But no, he's pretty good. Yeah. Okay. We used to live in Mexico for a few months, so he loves like avocado.
Oh, he's got all that stuff in him. That's great.
Waters, so he's all into that.
Brilliant.
So he's
you'll be set.
Yeah. Nice. He's not like some perfect, amazing, you know, but he's
We aren't. There
aren't any. There isn't such thing. Yeah. Surrender.
Yeah, and I think that is the biggest lesson. I mean, people always talk about like, well, being a yoga teacher, like it must be such a good preparation for like pregnancy and motherhood, and I think they're always talking about it in this terms of like, well, your body must be really fit, and and you're like, actually, it's about flexibility, and it's not about flexibility in body, it's about flexibility in mind. And it's about being able to go, this isn't how I thought this was going to go, but you know what, it's going to be okay, and I'm just going to let myself go with this flow, and I'm also going to let myself be upset about that, and I'm going to let myself like grieve the loss of what I had thought and all of those things. And I think your practice is this massive support system in those times. There's so much stuff that when I was really struggling, if I hadn't had breath practices or I hadn't had like meditations or I hadn't had
yin yoga,
it's not about. I really think. I mean, it took me I didn't put on a huge amount of weight in pregnancy at all, but then I struggled really with breastfeeding, and I had to eat so much to make any milk that I put on a lot of weight afterwards, which I wasn't expecting at all. And then, not a lot, I mean, it wasn't like I ballooned, so it's not fair to say that, but I put on a lot more than I'd put on in pregnancy anyway, and so that was a surprise for me. And it took me, you know, even with my job and being really physically active, it took me like a good 2.5 years to get back to anywhere near the kind of body type that I had before. And I think that's how long it takes. I think we have to really give ourselves a lot more time, and I think the message that we're getting constantly in the media is that you should get back to your normalness like much quicker. And it's not, firstly, like you said, it's not about getting back, it's about like moving on. But it's also, of course, we have a sense of like, I want to have a little bit of my old life, and I want to get into my jeans that I love, and all those things, and that's completely fine to want those things. But I remember my midwife saying to me, like afterwards, like a week later, I was like, when is my vagina going to feel or look like anywhere near normal? And she was like, I'd wait like a year or so. And it was a really good thing, because had she said like a couple of months, I would have been like,
your expectations.
But a year or so, I was like, okay, so all bets are off there. Like we don't have to think about that then, we just give that time. And
I think it's like, you know, we're postpartum and we're postnatal like kind of forever. Like have you had a child in the last 6 months, or the last 3 years, or the last 10 years? Like, have you had a child? Have you given birth? Has your body grown a baby? You know? Yeah. So I think
it's different. It just is different. And you know, I feel, I'm sure you're the same. You know, 5. So for me, my son just turned 5. In my practice, there are certain things that just are off the cards for me now still. And I know that my core integration isn't the same at the top where there was a tiny bit of separation. And I know to be really mindful of my sacroiliac, and one of my hips is still a little bit wonky and it can pop out really easily. And there's loads of things that you just have to be more mindful of. Exactly. And you don't know those things before because you don't know how it is to inhabit that postpartum body. And it really is, you just don't have the same things, because like you said, when you're giving of yourself to create a life, you have given, you know, and of course you get back in loads of ways, but there has to be an acknowledgement of the fact that you gave of yourself for so long, and you are continually giving of yourself, and so you don't have those same stores of just like
Exactly.
Rejuvenate, bounce back, do those things. And so we have to be a little bit kinder.
And honouring that too, honouring the fact that you did, you know?
Yeah, that you did that work. And I think that's why if women are going to postnatal classes, it's really important to find someone who really knows what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Because it's not about going to it really frustrates me when people go to a postnatal yoga class and it's like, just like, get back to your body, fitness, and you're like, no, hang on, but do you know what it's like for that woman who hasn't slept for 3 years? It's what she needs is a totally different thing. You can having the concept. I know I didn't have the concept of that before. I knew how it was to be tired, but not like the level of tiredness that I've had. I mean, it's just you can't push your body in the same way, and it isn't what your body needs. Your body needs to replenish. Or if you're still breastfeeding, and you've still got relaxin in your body, you're going to have joints that are really soft and loose and aren't supported, and you need to look after them. Or if you've had a C-section, you know, all those different things are different. So the one thing that I would really plead for women is go to the classes afterwards, get support, go to circles, but make sure you find someone who really knows what they're talking about, and the focus isn't like exercise based solely.
Totally.
It's
and
like
I think
support.
as well, like, you know, you've given birth, you become a mother, so you've softened, like physically you've softened, also energetically you've softened, you're in a more feminine state now, you're in a more yin energy, so just to like embrace that. But perhaps that's hard for people who have been very, you know, go, doing like high intensity exercise or sport, you know, to step back into the more flowy, soft, gentle, booking into a yin class instead of a hot yoga class.
And do you have a lot of women who come to your women's circles who are like, friends have said you need to go to this, and they're still in a place of really resisting it when they arrive to you?
I have women who come who just think it's pregnancy yoga. They're not sure that we're going to talk about
feelings. Oh really? Have their feelings?
So and I love when someone comes in and what's ahead. But most of the time they just find it so beneficial, and they often the same comments come up, like it's this non-judgmental space. I feel heard and listened to, and you know, just people being valued and heard and seen. That's really important. But there are some people who are just like, no, that's not really my thing, thank you. And that's fine.
And it's great.
That's fine, that's good,
like it's good for people to say that. Like, you don't have to, just because you're pregnant, you don't have to love pregnancy yoga. I mean, you just don't have to. Like, yoga is not the thing that everybody wants to do. I mean, I personally think everyone should be doing it, but it's not
I was going to say, like, no, hang on a minute. You definitely disagree with this thought, No,
I think yoga can benefit everyone, but it's like anything. Some people love running, some people don't love running. And, you know, if you're not loving pregnancy yoga, that isn't good for your oxytocin. You're not going to be coming out of there feeling this big oxytocin high. You're going to be just like, I hate it.
But often the first time you do lots of things, you hate them. Like loads of things you do that are you know that are good for you. You don't enjoy the first time at all. But there's something that brings you back to it. Like, I mean, I know first time I sea swam, I did it at Christmas time about 10 or 12 years ago. I hated it. I nearly swearing. I really, really hated it. And like, for some reason, a year later I was doing it again. And for some reason, a year later I was doing it again. And then suddenly it became like all through the year. And you still know that it's perverse in a way that you're like, there's something in here for me, but there's something in here that I resist. And it's the same with this as well. I mean, there's always going to be a resistant part of it, because, you know, once you allow the emotional aspect to surface, then you're kind of like, well, listen, it's all out and now, you know. So you start to engage in space, and it means you can't just kind of put the genie back in the bottle. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably what makes it very difficult for them, because they understand that the rest of their lives, the genie needs to be back in the bottle. Jack is in the box, and then and they don't really know how to bring that out in such a way as like, I've changed, or you know what, I want to speak in this kind of, use these emotional kind of language now. And I reckon that for women coming to women's circles who are used to inhabiting that really male environment, that must be a huge challenge, a real shift, because it can be really disruptive for their home lives and all that sort of stuff. Like in a good way, I guess.
Yeah, I think in a good way,
And also, I mean, but like, it's been said a million times, but change is really uncomfortable. And like, sometimes for some people, just the change of pregnancy enough is uncomfortable enough. You know, and they're still they're dealing with that every day, because there's no 2 days that are the same, and everything is changing constantly. So sometimes it can be like, you have to meet yourself where you are. You have to be like, this is enough for me. I don't have the space or the capacity right now to go into a room full of other people.
And some women feel very like just coming into their cave and nesting, and they don't really feel like going out and, you know, expressing themselves to people. That's so they should honour that then as well.
But it's about the fact that I think for me it's like letting people have the knowledge that there are options out there, and that's it. I mean, and for me that's what, like, for this podcast we're going to be going on and talking to different people and experts in different fields around pregnancy and birth, but for me this was about like people being able to hear some birth stories, hear what it is that we do, and know that those options are out there. So if it's something they're curious about, they can go and find it online. Or like if they're in New Zealand and they want to find you, they can come. Your handle on Instagram.
Yeah, it's inner.vibrance.
Okay.
And my new website, it's just about finished. By the time this goes out, hopefully, is innervibrance.net.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay, great. That's exciting.
My circles and things.
Yeah.
But I come back and forth here as well. So
yeah, you might be coming back.
I might be coming back here. Yeah.
Hey. Don't know.
More
then we might have some joint workshops.
Stop it! Don't plant those seeds. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, also if you have any questions for Aisling, you can contact us, or you can comment underneath, and we can pass them on to you. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
coming.
so much. That was so lovely. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing what you guys are doing too. It's amazing.
It's really exciting. It's so nice to have someone from across the world come. And I think it's really nice, like we were talking about, it's about building community and connection, but social media allows us to make this connection that's like worldwide. And then there are always people who are like, oh, I'm emigrating to New Zealand, or I'm going here, and being able to know people in different areas that you can pass. I know,
the world becomes smaller. We feel closer.
We were looking at our audience online recently, and we found out like nearly 50% of our audience are in the States. We were like, what?
Oh wow!
Yeah, wow.
Like, how did that happen?
Yeah,
I don't know anyone in America.
Better start speaking in different accents, or like facilitating this somehow.
They're probably listening for the accent too, though.
Yeah, possibly. Cool, yeah, of course, great. So ham up the Irish into the stage Irish.
We dress you up as a leprechaun.
You first. All right. Listen, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you guys for watching. And come see us soon. I'm watching this series evolve. I'm very excited to see where it goes.
And if you have a specific person in mind around pregnancy and birth who lives in Ireland or is coming to Ireland, let us know. We already have a doula and we have a home birth midwife, but we are also looking for someone who has done extended breastfeeding in Ireland to talk about their experiences personally. You don't have to be an expert of something to do with lactation, just
I know
have to have lactated. Do you?
We'll talk.
Okay. Well, that is really good. And if there's anyone who lives or works in the hospital system, like an obstetrician, a consultant, it is basically that. Someone who's a midwife in the hospitals at the moment. That would be really interesting, because we'd love to have all the different sides of the story out there so people can really get the information. So if you have any people, pass them on to us. Or if you want to share your stories,
embrace your journey.
Yes, indeed. Okay.
Cool.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Is that good?
Perfect pause. What the F? Well done. Put it there.
Like a pro.
That was the best.